We have a group of panelists here that represent experts from across the university community here to try to answer as many questions as we possibly can. I thought rather than bore you with a PowerPoint, we're just going to make it a conversation to the best of our ability, given it's a webinar. And we've put together some of the frequently asked questions we've received over the last few days. And I thought maybe I'd just start us with categories, both to our panelists and to our guests joining us. And the first place I thought we'd start would be with residence life and residence life questions, if that's okay with David and others, and then we'll move forward from there. Maybe before we get started, let's go around the panelists and introduce yourselves to our webinar participants, particularly since most of these folks are our first year students, which we're excited to have back. So I'll start first, just to be clear. I'm Tess Cootie, and I'm the Vice President for Strategic Communications, and I'm also an alumna. I graduated in 1993. Courtney, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome to tonight's webinar. I'm Courtney Cunningham, and I've been helping Tess in the Trinity Nerve Center. So here to also help answer questions. You'll probably see me popping around on Facebook and answering emails as well.
David Tuttle.
Hi, I'm David Tuttle. I'm the Dean of Students and Associate Director of Residential Life. And Tess, did you see Rachel's trying to get in?
I can't let
Courtney?
her in, but I know that she's joining. I did see a chat from her on that. So I believe that I think Courtney can add her as a panelist.
And somebody wants your halo to be turned off, Tess.
Oh, it's impossible to turn off my halo. But yes, let me work on it. Hang on one sec. How about, does that look better? I can't see myself, so.
Yes, you're human.
Okay.
You're human.
Right.
Yep.
Human again. All right. All right. Is that better? Less disruptive for everybody? All right. Valerie Schweers, do you mind introducing yourselves to the group?
Of course, Valerie Schweers, Director of Operations and Enrollment Management, and a parent of a Trinity alum.
Michael Soto?
Hi, Michael Soto. I am Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs.
Esther Kim?
I am Esther Kim. I'm Assistant Director for Orientation Programs.
Thank you, Esther. Thanks for being here. LaPetra Bowman?
Hi, I'm Dr. Petra Bowman. I'm the advising coordinator, and I oversee advising, first year advising at Trinity. Welcome.
Thank you. And I don't know if Rachel Topple's been able to join us. Is Rachel here?
Courtney's working on it. If we're going to start,
She's joining.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need her for the res life part. So
Yeah. So Rachel, if you can unmute and just introduce yourself really quickly, that'd be awesome. Thanks for doing this.
Hi, I'm Rachel Topple. I'm the Assistant Director for Residential Life.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you to all my colleagues for joining. So we'll get started. We were going to start, Rachel, with Residence Life, if that's okay. And I thought I'd start with some of our frequently asked questions. And so I'll run through the question and the answer that we're aware of. And Rachel, if we've got it wrong or you need to redirect, or as we have other questions that you guys want to pose around Res Life, ask those now, and then we'll move on to another section of student life shortly. So, all right, so let's talk about Res Life. One of the big questions we get asked is, as we're moving to all singles, will I be charged for a single, even though that's not what I originally requested? And the quick answer to that is, whether you're in City Vista and a roommate opts out, or you're a first year living on lower campus, you'll be in a single, but you will be charged for a double. So there will not be an upcharge for a single as we move to this de-densified environment. Any change on that, Rachel? We've got that right, as far as we know?
You're correct.
All right, sounds good. An interesting question I saw this week is, are we going to take all of the furniture, the second person's furniture out of Res Life rooms? And Rachel, my understanding is we don't have enough storage for that, so most of it's going to stay put where it is. Is that correct?
I will say, because I saw a few notes about this on the parent Facebook page today, you are welcome to move the furniture around within the room, since all students will be living alone, but we do ask that you put it back before you move out. And also, I did see a note about stacking dressers, and please don't do that. They are not designed to do that, and we don't want them to fall on anyone. So no stacking dressers, but move beds as much as you want.
That is great direction. Thank you, Rachel. Where a question came up about where students will be. You know, we normally have kind of a first year quad, but given that we're de-densifying and we're really trying to create singles, there'll be a little bit more stretching out across campus, although we're trying to keep first years mostly together. Can you talk about that a little bit, Rachel, how and where they'll be?
And so you're absolutely right. Since we did de-densify, we just had to kind of increase our boundaries of the first year area. First years will be in buildings with other first years, still in their communities. We still have the RA resident ratio is the same, if not smaller, actually, which is great. And so first years will also be, in addition to the regular quad, they'll be in Prassel, in Murchison, and then what we call the three sisters. So Myrtle, Isabel, and Susanna. But again, all with other first years and RAs right there with them.
And when we say first years, we also mean, do we also mean first time students like our first time transfer students? Will they be in those same areas, or they'll be scattered a little in other dorms as well?
They'll be a little more scattered.
Okay.
They'll be with our returning students who are of a more similar age.
Got it. What about our international students? Any particular area of residence life or residence halls that they'll be in, as we don't know those assignments quite yet, or we're working?
So basically, so the first years will be in those identified buildings, and then our transfer students, international students, any students who are offered the exemption will be in the remaining buildings together. So off the top of my head, that's what Thomas, Leitner, North and South.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
City Vista, no change.
Got it. No changes in City Vista. We've had some questions about these assignments for these rooms and whether it extends beyond the fall semester into the spring semester, and whether they'll have roommates in the spring semester. And one of the things we can tell you is this, that anything we tell you about the spring is our intentions, and simply that, right? And so right now, all the things we're working on, all the things we're announcing, those relate to the fall semester specifically. We're hopeful that the spring semester looks differently and that we can welcome other students back to campus in the spring. We'll just have to see how that goes. So it is possible that in the spring semester you would have a roommate as we create opportunities for other students to return. But what I can tell you is this: there's nothing certain about the spring. So we're trying to be really honest and transparent about that. The environment is very fluid with the public health conditions in San Antonio, and we're hopeful for the spring, but we always plan for the worst. So just know that it's very possible you would have a roommate in the spring semester. So we'll see how that goes. So we've had some questions too about what happens if campus has to close. You've heard stories maybe of from the spring about how that went, and could you leave things in your room if you had to if we had to leave a little early, or at Thanksgiving when we're planning to close anyway. And so Rachel, do you want to talk about that? I think the quick answer is travel light, right?
The quick answer is travel light, because unlike the spring, if we had to shut down campus again, we will ask students to move out entirely. And that's why we're going into this prepared. And so if any parents on here are thinking like, oh, my student is not wanting to pack light, maybe have them load up the car by themselves and see what that experience is like. In case they end up loading their car by themselves on campus. So yes, please, please, please pack light, because you will have to move out, and everyone will have to move out at the end of the semester, regardless, in preparation for that spring semester and changes that we anticipate, hopefully, with more of us together on campus.
Thank you, Rachel. That's really good advice. Let's see, we've had some questions about kind of how the move-in will go. Can my parents, my brothers, my sisters, can they all help me move in when I return to campus? Whether, no matter what year I am, can I get help from lots of people helping me move in? The answer that we've been getting from the Health and Wellness Work Group, and you tell me if this is right, Rachel, is that we really like you guys to restrict it to one parent helping you move in, so that we can keep the campus de-densified to the best of our ability. Normally it's a crush of people, and that's just an unsafe environment right now. So to keep you guys safe, but still give you an opportunity to have that little family support, you get to pick mom or dad or brother or sister or aunt or uncle, and make the best of that. And it would be kind of a move in and move on. And if you guys wanted to go off campus together to visit from there, you could after you move through your other activities or responsibilities with move in. Anything you want to amend with that from that, Rachel, from the health and wellness work group?
No, just in case there's any confusion, we had said previously that 2 people were okay. So if people have joined on previous calls, that this is a new change.
And if we can go back to 2, we will let you. But part of our T2 scenario is really helping to reduce the numbers of people on campus the best we can and minimize exposure. So we're working through that stuff every day. Move-in days. I know that we've had some questions about that, and we've published some timelines on the website. I will just tell you that I think that to the extent that you're flexible, please be so, and we will do our best to stick to those dates. But as we're getting responses back from students about who is moving on, there might have to be adjustments and move-in days to accommodate safer numbers. Also because we have to do testing, right? So we're gonna be doing COVID-19 testing for everybody when they come back to campus, and we need to do that in an orderly fashion, and so that we're not having too many people to test in one day so that they can't be physically distanced. So the schedule's published, and we intend to stick with that, but there might be minor changes or adjustments for some of you. Like I know I spoke to one young man who's got a twin sister moving into another university within the day, and mom's trying to get to both places, and you have a day you prefer. We're gonna do our best to accommodate that. But in the main, try to be flexible in your move-in time where you can. Anything you wanna adjust with that, Rachel, or that sound about right to you?
That's right, and they'll receive further details both from NSO, I believe, if Esther has anything to add on that, and follow-up information from Res Life.
Esther, anything you want to add to that? I know we're going to talk all about NSO, but now's as good a time as any to talk about new student orientation and kind of what new first-time students can expect.
Yeah, absolutely. To piggyback on what Rachel said, students will be provided more detailed information regarding move-in, depending on their halls. And so regarding orientation, we continue to hope to have a robust orientation program for our new students, including transfers, since many of them will be on campus. And that's a combination of both virtual and in-person. We're trying to do things as safely as possible, but also to provide that in-person community building aspect. And so it may not be as robust orientation as it was previously, but we want to make sure that we'll have some academic programs, some social programming, some evening programming, and some really fun entertainment programs hosted by our student groups as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Esther, very much. I know you guys are working really hard in student life and student involvement overall to create a really engaging experience for first-time students on campus and for those living on campus. And we can talk more about that and answer questions as we go. And big kudos to Esther and team for their flexibility and creativity and pivoting all of what we would normally do, running on top of each other, climbing towers, all kinds of stuff. And trying to recreate that in a really amazing way as safely as possible. Thanks for all your work on that, Esther. Everybody really appreciates you. So one of the questions that has also come up is, will I have the same room for the spring? So if I start in this room, will I have that same room in the spring, Rachel? Is there any suggestion that you might have to pivot or change, or does the same rule apply about spring? Stay nimble.
Yes, and so that's part of why we are having everyone move out in November, because the spring semester, the assignments will likely look very, very different.
Good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Some questions had come up about, and we'll talk more about this in health and safety, but what disinfection and cleaning will look like of our residence halls and what responsibility students will have in being part of that team. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Rachel, or you want to?
Absolutely. So students will be responsible for disinfecting their own living space. Bring those Clorox wipes, bring the spray. So our housekeeping service, ABM, will still be in the rooms bi-weekly to clean the bathrooms, but they'll just do their normal cleaning. It won't be anything more than what a returning student might be used to. And so we will ask students to really keep their surfaces clear, so that when housekeeping does come in, it's easier to actually clean, not have to navigate around there as much stuff. And so just, using the drawers, using the under sink cabinets and things like that to keep the area as clear as possible.
Excellent. Great point. Any other questions you think you guys have been seeing in residence life that we've missed? I'm kind of crawling the chat too. I think we've hit most that are here. Any other questions about res life? We can talk briefly about deadlines maybe today, the first year students, you received your assignments, and we really love to hear back from you by 11:59 p.m. On Wednesday, so that we can commit to those assignments and finish everything out. Res Life is continuing to work on the assignments for other students that have an opportunity to be on campus, and that deadline for you will be extended until Friday, I understand, because it'll probably be late tomorrow before those assignments go out. Think about the most complex jigsaw puzzle you've ever done, and that's what it's like to make housing assignments when you've normally take weeks and weeks and months to do them, and you throw the whole puzzle up in the air, all the pieces on the floor, and you have to put it back together again in 48 hours. That's what our Res Life team is dealing with. So they'll get those back out to you as quickly as possible. So again, first years, let us know by 11:59 on Wednesday. The other students that are in this group one, you got an extension until Friday, as you will probably receive your assignments sometime tomorrow, late tomorrow, for that. Is that right, Rachel? Anything you want to adjust there?
I will just say on a positive note for the first years in the room, so your suite mate assignment was chosen with just as much care as we normally put into your roommate assignment. And so that housing form that you filled out, everything like that, that was used to match you with a suite mate. And so we're really hopeful that you'll find some good people to be around, and you'll hear from your RAs by early next week. And many of you are actually in communities that you might not realize are in communities. So Hope Hall, Sustainability Hall, Entrepreneurship, HUMA, Sub-Free. Hopefully I'm not missing anything off the top of my head. And your RA will clarify that for you because it's not written in your housing assignment. So if you don't know already, you'll find out really soon.
Thank you so much for pointing that out, Rachel, because I forgot. That was a question I'd seen in the past, is are those still potential? So thanks so much for the care you guys put into honoring the original requests that people had and their preferences. That's really incredible work in a short amount of time. So David, did we miss anything on Res Life before we move into maybe health and safety, and then we'll go into student life and student involvement? Anything you think we missed on Res Life? And you're on mute. David, you're on mute, by the way. Tuttle.
I got it. Okay. So sorry about that. There's a lot of questions in the Q&A about numbers of guests in room. When will the move-in schedule be out? So there's a lot of move-in related questions in the Q&A if somebody wants to hit on those.
So again, on move-in, there's a schedule published. There may be minor tweaks to that to accommodate testing and some of the NSO activities. And so just continue to watch for updates from Esther and team, and watch the COVID-19 website. But the general guidelines for, the international students coming, I think on the 11th, RAs moving in 7th, 8th-ish, first year students 14th, 15th, and then returning students will come the 21st, 22nd. Those are and I think City Vista is the 15th and 16th, I think. But those will all be published on the COVID-19 site, and just keep watching for updates on that as we have to make any adjustments based on our need to do the testing. Okay, moving on. Let me talk a little bit about health and wellness and safety on campus, and then we'll move into student involvement, academic affairs, because we have colleagues on from academic affairs and advising that can answer your questions. I know there are lots of questions about registration, for example. But I think it's really important for us to just, as you're making your decisions about coming back to campus, to get some good, solid information, if you've not already been following along, about how life on campus will be a little bit altered. And while I know you don't, if you're not a returning student, don't have lots to compare it to, you might have a perception. And so just to reinforce it, there will be physical distancing on campus, which is why you're being given the opportunity to live in singles and why that's important. So there are maximum numbers of people that can gather or congregate. Our guiding principle on that is that we will have no more than 50 individuals in an indoor space, like a classroom, and that all those individuals need to be 6 feet apart and wearing face coverings. And so all the classrooms and common spaces on campus have been altered or adjusted to accommodate that guideline. And while we will have disposable masks for you and some cute ones and things like that, you should bring your own face coverings where you can. It's up to you whether they're disposable or washable. I have 2 boys that forget to wash theirs, so you make your own determinations on that. But we have some great advice on how to wear a mask, how to clean a mask, how to store it on the health and safety guidelines on the website. Cleaning on campus has been upped as well, and every night, every space will be COVID cleaned, and so that they're ready the next day for and arranged for safe classes. Between classes, just like when you go to the gym now and you're asked to kind of wipe down your own equipment before and after you use it, you will be asked to participate in wiping down spaces, you know, wherever you spend time, you need to wipe it after you go. Lots of hand sanitizer, hand washing stations, encouraging all of that behavior as well. Outdoor spaces where you can be 6 feet apart. Our guide right now is the state guideline of no more than 100 people in an outdoor venue or outdoor space. We will have a few outdoor classrooms designated on upper campus. So some classes will be actually outdoors. When you're 6 feet apart or more, passing each other, and you can physically distance, you don't necessarily have to, or you're exercising, you don't necessarily have to wear a face covering as long as you can stay apart from people. But if it's in an environment outdoors where you really can't maintain that distance, or you're engaged in really vigorous activities where you might be vocalizing a lot, you would be asked to wear a mask if both of those things are present at the same time. And definitely willing to answer any questions you all have about the health and wellness guidelines. When you receive the information, you also received a couple of forms, links to a risk acknowledgement form. Our general counsel is not on the call, but she wants me to reinforce that that's important. It's just part of the new way that organizations have to operate. The second is the Protect TU Health Pledge. This is kind of the best representation of the new sort of social contract we're all going to engage in as we start the fall. And it speaks to our shared willingness and commitment to protect each other through making good decisions, not just in wearing masks and physically distancing, but when we're off campus, maintaining the same kind of healthy and protective behaviors when we're off campus as well. We are together and we stay together for the whole semester to the extent we can't control everything that happens in San Antonio or comes onto campus, but we can control our own choices. And to the extent that we hold each other accountable to making those good choices, we'll have a better shot at staying together for the whole semester and not having the impact of the virus, you know, force something to happen that none of us want. So it's going to be really hard, but really important that you don't have all night, you know, Xbox gaming sessions with no masks on top of each other, yelling and screaming. It's going to be really important that, you know, you don't go to parties where people are not making good choices like that and all kinds of other ones. And so, you know, that's a little different than what you might have been expecting for your first semester. And I just want to be really honest and transparent with you that that's the way it's going to be. And that's the way it needs to be. And those have been codified as part of our student conduct and academic honor code for the fall, because we're just all in this together and trying to stay together for as long as we can. And for all of the services on campus to be open. So I've seen questions about, will the gym be open, the pools, the library? Yes, they will be, with the same kinds of restrictions that you would imagine: occupancy, loads, physical distancing, making sure you clean up in the gym after yourself, things like that. And to the extent that we're doing our best to keep those going, we'll have full services for the limited number of students that are able to come to campus. Many of our fellow students, your fellow students, have graciously agreed to learn remotely for the semester so that those of you can be on campus. And so thinking about that, you know, you want to honor their choices to help us by, you know, taking your opportunity to be on campus really, really seriously. There's questions about visitors to campus as part of the health and wellness guidelines. They'll be really limited. We really are trying to create, if you haven't already heard this, we talk about the Trinity bubble a lot. Sometimes it's a bad thing. In this instance, we need the Trinity bubble to be there. So there will be students who live remotely or live off campus rather, who will be coming onto campus. But other than that, we will really be limiting visitors to campus. And that includes parent visitors or friends from outside of the campus throughout the school year. You're absolutely welcome to meet them off campus, but that's really not going to be possible for the fall too much. But Tycoon Flats is around the corner, and there are lots of great places to meet up. So those are the big things about health and wellness. There have been some questions too about triggers around what would cause the campus to close before we open or close after we open. And I'm happy to explain those in real detail. There's a lot of work that went into it by a group of health professionals, epidemiologists, physicians. But the long and the short of it is this: we're watching all of San Antonio's health indicators, and the ones that really matter for us at Trinity are the health system stressor score. And we're also tracking how long testing turnaround is in and around San Antonio if we need to use that overflow testing. Once we are on campus and we're all together living together, then we're going to start to track some of our own indicators for our little town. We're treating Trinity like it's a little town. And so we're going to track things like positivity rate, which it means of the people we test in a given period of time, what percentage of those tests are coming back positive. Doubling rate, which means from Monday to Monday, or from any given point in time, how long is it taking before the number of positive cases doubles? And we have guidelines for that. And then we have some maximum number of positive tests and quarantines that we think we can handle and be safe about it. We've doubled the size of health services and added our own abilities to test, to contact trace, and to treat students who are in quarantine or isolation. But those reach a certain limit. And so we will transparently track all of that on our website, and any parent or student will be able to follow along sort of day by day, week by week, to see how we're trending on those things. So speaking of quarantine and isolation, because we're moving to single rooms, if you need to quarantine while you await a test result, you'll be able to do that in your own room. If you then become positive for COVID, we would prefer that you isolate and return home so that you can be with family and other people who love you and care about you while you isolate and recover. But we know that's not possible or feasible for everybody. And so you would be able to isolate in your room, hopefully. In rare circumstances, you might have to be moved, but isolate in your room. And then Trinity would mobilize everything we need to bring to you: healthcare, food, and other services. It's also going to be really important that when and if there are exposures, you guys participate in what we call contact tracing. So what that means is if you are exposed to someone, or you are someone who is positive, there'll be a team of professionals. One of them, a case manager, will be assigned to you, and they're going to ask you lots of questions about where you've been, who you've seen, so that we can get in touch with people. That's really important because it's how we stop the spread of the disease on campus, and that's why we've added those capabilities. The last thing that we're doing, because it's kind of like walls, like layers of defense, is the use of a tool that'll be on your wireless phone, both Apple or Android, and it's a daily symptom checker, and it'll proceed like a conversation with a chatbot, right? And basically, you'll begin every day, whether you lived on campus or off, frankly, but if you're coming onto campus as a student, faculty, or staff member, each day you'll do a little symptom check. It'll ask you a few questions, and then based on your responses, you'll either get a little green badge that says you're safe and clear to come to class today and to proceed from your room, or you'll be directed to call the COVID team and get some additional direction or help, and we'll take it from there. It is really important that you participate in that too, because again, all of these are ways we kind of close the window on the spread of the virus to the extent we can on campus. So those are the quick questions on health and wellness. If there are other questions that we're missing, team, and you're seeing it, please let me know so I can answer those. Let's see. Next section I thought we'd talk about Courtney, unless you see any health and wellness questions that I missed. Oh, you know what? I have seen a couple questions about numbers of students on campus. So we have about 925 rooms, Rachel, on campus that'll be singles. And then we have a little over 220 rooms in City Vista or 220 people in City Vista. And so that's about the maximum number we want living. I consider City Vista as living on campus, an extended campus. And then there are a number of students that live in the San Antonio area. They've already signed leases. They plan to be here and live here, and we're letting those folks come on campus. I'll be honest with you, in the years past, that's been about 300, 350 people. I don't know this year what that number will be yet. We're gonna ask those folks to declare themselves in the next couple of weeks. But that's kind of the 1,000 to 1,500 people coming onto campus, about 1,100 living on campus is where we wanna be for a safe, dedensified environment, if that helps give you some sense of that.
Tess, can I clarify just a couple of things?
Please do.
So just because I've seen it pop up in the chat a few times, if you have already committed that you are living off campus, unfortunately you can't change your mind to come on campus because the whole idea behind all this is to de-densify. And then in the case that someone tested positive, you actually would move into isolation somewhere else on campus so that you're not around your suite mate in the shared bathroom. And so there's been, David, do you have, I think you've been in potentially some of those meetings.
I'm sorry about that, Rachel. I thought that we were keeping folks where they were. So we'll
no,
update.
only because of that shared space.
Got it. Okay, we will.
Sorry, I'm answering Q&A. I'm trying to address all the Q&A questions.
Thank you for doing that, David. So we'll get back to you on the isolation space then. We need to be able to have a maximum number of isolation spaces, so we'll keep you guys posted on that. And let's see. I'm trying to look for any other Q&A on health and wellness, and then we'll go straight to more of the campus environment. So student involvement and student life. Esther, you've addressed some of this, but do you or David want to talk a little bit more about, a lot of parents and students have asked a lot of things, how much is really going to be virtual, and what are you going to do kind of on an ongoing basis to help facilitate connections and help me get involved at Trinity? I don't want to just sit in my room alone. So how's that going to look and work for us? How are we facilitating that in this environment?
Yeah, absolutely. As it pertains to orientation, I think even before that, we've done a lot of virtual socials. This week starts our regional socials for new students. And so if you haven't checked out the pre-NSO page, please do. It's through your admissions portal. And on the Val's smiling over here as well. That's a great tool. We're gonna have a lot of more weeks of socials coming up based on affinity groups, spiritual life. And so that's your first connection with your peers and current students, and some maybe faculty and staff as well. Once you arrive on campus, I think naturally you'll be put into your residence hall groups based on your RA. So that's your first community building right there in person, in addition to your FYE. So you have a lucky opportunity to be in your FYE classes for the first 4 days before all students start classes. In terms of virtual or online, we're trying to make sure it's a good mix of both. Also knowing that we are limited to the outdoor capacity of 100. And obviously you may know that we have more than 100 students arriving on campus. So we want to make sure we provide an equitable and fair platform and a program for everyone. We do have some exciting programs happening during orientation that we hope to release in the next couple of weeks that will share with you some of those details. As it pertains to the rest of the year, we are partnering with a lot of student groups to think about entertainers that will be happening virtually, but also coming up with some ideas of how we can create a robust on-campus experience and what that looks like socially as well, because I know that's very important for everyone.
Thanks, Esther. I appreciate it. If you guys have any questions about that, let us know. So there was also some questions about while we're still, kind of bridging between res life and student involvement, about for those students who are applying for exceptions, sort of what that process looks like. David, do you want to just quickly address the groups that we're prioritizing for exceptions for moving on to campus? to fill the limited number of rooms we still have available?
Yeah, I'm not sure I remember all the categories, but I think we're looking at students with financial or personal hardships. We're looking at students who have academic or research considerations. And I think in that case, that would be mostly seniors, I would think, who have to get these things done to graduate. And then we're going to look at athletes. Am I missing any groups?
That's right, David. And we've got fall and winter athletes in particular.
Right. Yeah. And if space permits, maybe spring too. But so the deadline is midnight on Wednesday. On Thursday, we're going to sort that information. We're going to meet on Thursday afternoon. We have a committee of about 7 or 8 people from the different areas. So for example, if it's a research question, we have a faculty who works, specifically with research. Dr. Soto will help advise us on academic concerns. And we have somebody from financial aid on the committee. So we have all the right people there to look and be able to make those decisions. And we'll try to get those out as soon as possible. We're saying Monday, but hopefully sooner.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. If you have any questions about that, please ask them in the chat. Other questions about student involvement have involved questions around dining services and what that will look like. David, do you want to talk a little bit about maybe and the grab and go around campus and what that'll entail for all students?
Yeah, how many people can be in one space at once? Is it 50 now?
Yeah, inside, yeah. Okay,
so Maybe Hall is our main dining hall on lower campus, and we've put up a dividing wall. And so essentially we'll have two 50-person rooms in Maybe Hall that, and maybe will be open basically from 8 in the morning till, 9 or so at night. So it will spread out a little bit so people can go through the dining hall. It will look a little different, look more like a Luby's than how it normally looks, that you go through the line. You'll be able to see your options first so that you know what you're getting into in terms of what you may or may not choose as you go down the line. And then we'll want people to leave fairly quickly so that we can rotate more people in. People can come through and just take their items to go. We'll have people go through one door and then out the back exit from Maybe Hall. So it should be pretty efficient. The other areas in the commons, for those of you who are RAs or returning students, we basically, we're renovating the commons anyways. We're taking out all the furniture, and we will use kind of Fiesta Texas style stanchions and stuff for people to, snake through to the revolve station, which will be in the back of the dining hall. Back of the commons. So that's going to be new. And then 1 or 2 of the other stations will be open at any given time. Starbucks will be open, but you have to run an obstacle course to get through that. And then, we'll also have the food trucks out too. So we were looking at an app to order food, but that seems to be not likely at this point.
Got it. And I think there've been some questions about common spaces like kitchens, speaking of dining, in residence halls. You or Rachel could tackle this, but common spaces like lounges and kitchens in a COVID environment in residence halls, you can kind of speak to how we're treating those. And Rachel, I don't know if you wanted to.
Absolutely. So all of the residence hall lounge space will have a decreased capacity, just like everywhere else on campus, because keep in mind, so to have 6 feet of social distancing, that's 36 feet around you per person. So it's a bit of space. And then, was that the only part of that question? I'm sorry, Tess.
Yeah, kitchens, will they be able to use the kitchens in dorms, things like that?
Yeah.
Same situation.
And part of how we're decreasing just the bodies moving through is you will only have access to your own residence hall. So that'll hopefully help with increased traffic or decreased traffic because you won't have extra people in the building.
Cool. I know we have a few students, like international students on the call, who will live in City Vista. Do you want to address quickly? I know we've had a lot of questions about what happens if campus closes. Will City Vista also close? And the answer we've been given as we talk to Res Life is it just depends. It depends on the situation that would necessitate the closure of campus. And even then, there will be exceptional situations, like for example, international students who in the spring we were able to accommodate on campus because of, you know, the difficulty with returning home, whereas other students might have more of that possibility. So the answer is maybe City Vista would close. I would plan for the worst, but if you're in an exceptional situation, the university will work with students to make sure that you're safe and taken care of here as we need to. That sound about right, Rachel? Anything you wanna? All right, I got the thumbs up on that one. Other student, this is kind of a student involvement, student life question. It's student workers. We get a lot of questions about what's happening with student workers in the fall, whether it's federal work study or institutional work study. And the guidance that when I talked to HR today, it is that we absolutely want to continue to encourage student workers through our various departments and those opportunities, as long as those jobs can be done safely, following all the health and safety guidelines, that those will continue. And for students who end up being remote, we'd love to see if supervisors on campus can work with those students to have them continue their jobs remotely as well. So we'll continue to work with you. However, having a peer tutor position or having a student worker position is not one of the criteria that you could use to apply for an exception. It really is what Dean Tuttle mentioned before around particular hardships, unsafe living environments, being involved in research activities that are critical for you to complete your time at Trinity, and then those limited number of athletes that are trying to get ready for a return to their sport as quickly as possible. So that's kind of where we are on the student life, student involvement side. Esther, David, anything I missed on student life or student involvement? I'm looking through some of the Q&A too.
You know what, I sent a question to Rachel about, there's a number of questions and I don't think it was addressed, but from a technical standpoint, a lot of people are not sure how to confirm that they want to accept their room assignment by Wednesday at midnight.
No, you don't have to accept. If we don't hear from you, we assume that you're coming. So don't worry if you're trying to figure out how do I tell them? Unless you turn us down, we're gonna plan to see you on campus.
So only email by 11:59 on Wednesday if you do not intend to take your room assignment. Is that right?
If you currently have a room assignment and you want your room assignment, we don't need to hear from you.
Okay. If you've been offered one and you don't want it, then please email us by 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday. Okay, got it. There you go. Just making sure we've covered that. Okay, so lots of questions about Tiger Flex and registration and what do I do if I have an in-person class? So I think Petra and Michael, you guys might be up on these. So one of the questions that we've heard a lot is, tell me what Tiger Flex really means. What can I expect when my class says Tiger Flex? Dr. Soto, do you want to address that?
I'd be glad to. Tiger Flex is a hybrid instructional model that makes use of really high-tech in-classroom technology to allow an instructor to be in person, interacting with students in a safe way who choose to be in class in person, while simultaneously interacting with students who prefer to take the course online. And so it will allow that type of live interaction with an online group and an in-person group. And it also affords some opportunities to record lectures for asynchronous learning if that's also necessary.
So one of the things that could happen, as an example, right, Dr. Soto, would be there might be a professor that would say, for various reasons, on a Tuesday, Thursday class, maybe group A would come to class on Tuesday, group B would learn remotely, and then swap on Thursday. That's a possibility, right?
That would be one option. There may be occasions when a lecture might be better delivered strictly online, and so the instructor would teach from home or office to an online class with the expectation that they would discuss that lecture in person the following week. It all depends on the specific needs of the class and the learning outcomes that the instructor wants to get across.
Okay, makes sense. It also means, does it not, that for those students who decide ultimately to learn remotely, to stay home, for example, and learn remotely, that a Tiger Flex class should be available to them as remote learners, correct?
That's right. If a course is labeled TigerFlex, then a student can expect to complete it remotely.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions about TigerFlex? Please just put them in the Q&A and we'll try to get to those. Or you can always email us separately at the nervecenter@trinity.edu. There have been some questions about registration, particularly for first-year students, and trying to reassure people that it always sort of works out. Dr. Bowman, do you want to talk a little bit about the process with academic advisors for registration and how students, particularly first-year students with questions, might engage with their advisors to get some clarity and comfort?
Sure. So we mentioned early in the summer that our students were being advised in 8 cohorts and are being registered in 8 cohorts. Registration began July 22nd for the first group of students that were advised, and following through, right, every week, 2 individual cohorts are registering. So 1 cohort Monday and Tuesday, the second cohort Wednesday, Thursday, and so on and so forth through to August 14th. In correspondence with these different registration cycles, we have Dr. Soto and Dr. Colthorpe working very hard with course availability. Maybe Dr. Soto can talk more about that in a moment, but we have rolling caps. And so every Friday, basically registration freezes completely. No students are able to add through the weekend, right? And what we do is I raise the caps, but not for every section, because department chairs have only indicated certain sections that they want seats to be added, right, to. And so if students are expecting every closed course to open up with seats, that would not be what is planned, essentially, right? The faculty, the department chairs have indicated these 5 classes, raise them by 2 seats or 3 seats through for each week, right? So that's just something I want to clarify. I know there's some confusion about registration times. The registrar has indicated and has put into the system what the registration window is. So registration runs from July 22nd at 8:30 a.m. through September 2nd. That's the registration window. That's a process. That's us saying the system allows students to make changes to their schedule during this time. But within this window, we have registration windows for every student. And this is true of every registration period. So though there is an entire registration period in October, right, seniors will go first, then juniors, and so on. Well, in the summer, it's first year students, but based on the week of their appointments. And so because we want to, again, preserve course availability and so on, and also make sure that they have time with their advisors. So every student gets an hour, right? Not a 30-minute, not a 15-minute, a full hour with their individual advisor to talk about not just their transfer credits and dual credits, but also their academic trajectory, how they're feeling about attending college during a pandemic, right? What the type of relationship that they want to learn and how we can best support them. So there's a lot going on in those advising sessions, and every student, all 666 of them, will have individual appointments. We are in week 5 of appointments, and we are in our 3rd cohort of registration. So tomorrow, cohort 4 registers. It begins at 7 a.m. I know that there's been some confusion about that. Essentially, we clear so that by 7 a.m. students are able to go in and make changes. Every student, however, is limited to 14 hours. We see that our first year students, we understand on their social media pages, what I've heard, I can't see what's going on, but I've heard that they're like, oh, look, we can register for more than 14. You can, but we monitor it, and then we email you and ask that you drop below the 14. It's about course availability. And earlier, Tess mentioned being civically minded and being part of a community. And that also means just really registering, prioritizing your schedule with the courses that you really absolutely need for that particular time, and making sure that you also allow other students to have access to courses, which is why you're limited to 14 initially during the first 2 days of registration window that you have. You will be able to add beyond the 14 starting August 25th through September 2nd.
Excellent, thank you. You know, Dr. Soto, you might just address just generally, I know that we see sometimes, concern, particularly with first year students about, gosh, I know I'm really gonna, particularly STEM majors, I know I'm really gonna need these classes and they don't seem to be available to me. Is this gonna delay my ability to, pursue the degree plan that I have in mind? And when will I be able to take them? And I don't know if either you or Dr. Bowman wanna kind of just address, it's all gonna work out. You want to, some words of wisdom?
As Dr. Yeah, I'm glad to. As Dr. Bowman mentioned, we're keeping a very close eye on course capacities and working with departments and interdisciplinary programs as necessary to add room in courses to meet the needs of students. And in particular, for those programs that have highly sequenced curricula early on and that require students to knock a certain class out this fall semester, we make certain that those students get into those classes so that they can stay on a 4-year trajectory to graduate. And that's true across the board, no matter what the discipline is.
So again, just complimenting my colleagues, I want to say that one of the great things about having made the choice to attend Trinity, where it's highly personalized as a smaller environment, is that you can actually reach out to leadership, Dr. Soto in academic affairs, and they will understand and know your particular individual situation, work with your academic advisor, and help you make adjustments when things happen that are beyond your control. And it is a pandemic, it's COVID, and we all know a lot of what's happening is beyond our control. And that's the great thing about going to Trinity, is we're going to watch out for you and we're going to take care of you. And you don't know this yet, but you can trust us to do that. And when we have a gap or we make a mistake, we'll also help you figure it out. So, we're all going to proceed with a sense of goodwill and a commitment to each other, and, live our values. And it's really going to work out and be okay. The fact that you can have Dr. Bowman, Dr. Soto on the Zoom call with you says a lot about the decision that you made to come to a university that makes access to those decision makers available to you anytime. So I appreciate you guys being here, and everybody feel confident that you're in good hands. So one of the other questions that's come up a lot is, what if I get there and I feel uncertain or unsafe about the environment in San Antonio with public health conditions, or all of my classes are now online, and just for whatever reason, I'm having second thoughts about learning on campus and I want to return home. Can I do that? And or what if I decide I want to do I want to withdraw, temporarily withdraw? By when can I do that? So why don't we take the first question? Yes, you can. If you get here and say, this isn't what I thought or what I need to do, or I'm feeling unsafe or insecure, you can absolutely decide to go home and learn remotely. And there are some deadlines by which you can do that, and have a 100% of your room and board rebated to you, prorated maybe for the days or nights that you were here. And I believe, Dr. Soto, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the add drop deadline of September 2nd. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And then by the 3rd, it would be a 50% discount. And then by the 11th, if you wait until the 11th to make that decision, then there'd be 0 discount on tuition. That's tuition. And then room and board before September 2nd, a withdrawal would be a prorated rebate, right? Valerie, do I have that correct? If anybody has questions on that, okay.
That is correct.
And so the bigger point here is that there is a way for you to take care of that. And here's the thing. Again, like I just said, if you have extreme or unusual circumstances, that's the guideline, that's the policy. But if you have an unusual circumstance, we're happy to work with you and talk to you individually about your situation, and follow the policy, but also be responsive based on unique situations that people have. So yes, you can definitely do that. Of course, right now this week, you can also be thinking about it. And as Rachel would probably want me to say one more time, if you decide to change your mind, just let us know before midnight on Wednesday, if you possibly can. Anything, Dr. Soto or Dr. Bowman, on academic affairs that you want to address? I mean, maybe talk a little bit about our investment in academic technology and the work that the faculty have been doing to prepare for kind of this hybrid environment.
Sure, you can go online and watch some videos that introduce you to some of the technology that I will be using this fall, for example, to teach my class in person, but simultaneously to interact with students online. There are multiple cameras that are set up, multiple speakers that are set up to capture that back and forth and make it about as seamless as possible. We are implementing new technologies that allow us to easily record those class sessions so that students who need to will be able to access them during other times. And the most important thing, and this is why you're here, this is why you chose Trinity, you have faculty who are committed to getting to know you and to supporting your success. And so, for example, I was in a 2-hour meeting this morning with my fellow creative genius first year expression faculty members, figuring out how are we going to make this work to best support our students. And we are taking different personal approaches to that. I will be mostly in class. Some of my colleagues will be mostly online, but we're making sure that the first year experience course, for all of its superficial differences in delivery, still achieves the core goal of introducing students to college level thinking and writing. And I have some brilliant colleagues, and we've put together a really dynamic course, no matter what the instructional method for it.
Thank you for that. And of note, if we do have students that choose to learn remotely and you may have challenges with technology, maybe you've got bad Wi-Fi at home, maybe your laptop is not adequate for what you need to do the work. There was a form that we shared, and you can find it on the Google site, or if you email the Nerve Center, we'll resend you the link, where if you're a remote learner, you can request support, technology support like MiFi's to help you with internet access, laptop, that sort of thing. We'd love to get that back from you by Monday-ish, end of day if we can. So if you have a particular question about that, please email the Nerve Center so we can get you queued up for that, so that we can make sure you're provisioned in time for the start of the year. I'm looking through the questions again. There, a couple questions in case we have some first-year athletes. There have been some questions from first-year athletes about, will I be able to practice? Will I just be to conditioning and strength training? While we're on the topic of academic affairs, our athletics program is part of the academic affairs division because you're scholar athletes. So the answer is check with your coach. They're still working with the NCAA and our conferences to determine what you can and can't do from an eligibility standpoint. But I do know that at minimum, conditioning, keeping you healthy, keeping you prepared for your sport is something the coaches are planning, and to stay in contact with them on that. Our coaches are working hard to maintain and create those team environments, right? Particularly for our first year students, to get you integrated with your teams. So please stay in contact with them about that. And there have been some other questions about like testing and what happens if you become positive. So I'll just take another moment and answer those questions. So this could be a real nerdy conversation about testing, but there are lots of ways that you can be tested for COVID. You'll hear about antibody tests, antigen tests, and PCR viral tests. And then even among the PCR viral tests, there are now saliva swabs and nasal swabs. This is what we're doing for Trinity for our mass testing upon your return. The most reliable test for us right now is the PCR nasal swab. As the semester progresses, we will do on-demand testing as you need it, some surveillance testing to kind of check for the presence of the disease in the population proactively. And we may move to more of the saliva swab then. But at mass testing, we're using the nasal swab because it's the most reliable. Antibody tests do not tell us whether there's an active infection. They can tell us maybe if you had it, or maybe you just had a coronavirus, but it's not entirely accurate. And there have been problems with false positives with those. Rapid antigen tests do give us some good information, but then we just have to turn around and test you with a nasal swab anyway. So we're going to focus on the PCR nasal swab for the mass testing when you return. You will get details and instructions on how that's going to go. Right now, we're kind of trying to get that done. Like if you're a new student, you're coming on the 14th or on the 15th, that sort of within minutes of arriving that you're getting your test. The turnaround times on tests for us right now are 24 to 48 hours because Trinity has contracted with particular smaller labs in San Antonio to protect our turnaround times. Those can always shift or slip. But for now, we have really good turnaround times planned. And you won't have to quarantine while you wait for them, but we will ask you to stick to the schedule that Esther and others give you. and be thoughtful about who you're with and what you're doing, so that we can give ourselves as a good fighting chance at the contact tracing and mitigating if some of your peers do end up being positive. There have been questions about, well, can I be tested before I come and just bring you that result? You know, if you manage to get a test 24 to 48 hours before, we'll certainly take that and love to hear that from you. What we find is in most of the communities where our students would be coming from, there aren't those kinds of turnaround times. And, you know, 5, 7, 9 days, that's a little too long. A lot can have happened. A lot can have been exposed. You can be exposed to a lot between that time frame. So we're going to start the clock on the testing when you arrive. So that is the plan. And wherever you're isolating or quarantining, as I mentioned, we've doubled the size of health services. And so what we've done is we have physician, nurses, and LVNs who will be providing treatment plans for students who have to isolate on our campus, or mobilizing sort of your dining services, contact with faculty, you know, activities of daily living that you would need while you're quarantined. Our care managers, our case managers in health services will be overseeing making that happen for you. There's questions about, well, the risk acknowledgement forms kind of says you're on your own. Well, what we want you to know is ultimately you are responsible for your own care, directing your care and managing your care. But we are going to provide the resources and tools to get that care to you, right? But we're all responsible for managing our own health, our own behavior, and ultimately our own care. What does that look like in City Vista? So we will absolutely be testing for folks as they're moving into City Vista, and you will be part of our contact tracing plan. And then if you need to quarantine or isolate relative to City Vista, that will be trickier, as Rachel mentioned before, because there are more people in City Vista. So there'll be specific instructions for how someone who's in City Vista would need to isolate. Again, we'd prefer you return home if you can. But we consider City Vista this quasi on-campus, off-campus experience. And so we'll have more involvement with City Vista as it relates to testing, treating, and tracing than we will if it's a student who lives in the Atlee, you know, or some apartments elsewhere in campus. We cannot necessarily treat or manage your quarantine and isolation if you're living in an off-campus apartment, but we certainly will provide resources, and we're never going to let a student go without something. But we will be doing testing for all students, and any on-campus activities we will trace. We're not going to manage tracing for you to people off campus. What we're concerned about is what happens and who you've interacted with on the Trinity campus. So we won't go into contact tracing in the community, if that makes sense. So let's see, what other questions do you guys have that we've missed? Anybody pop in if I've missed something big that's kind of a theme while I'm scrolling through the Q&A. So we've had some questions too about if there will be curfews or limitations on your activities off of campus. You know, we certainly are not starting with anything like that, and we don't anticipate it. That's what that Protect TU Health Pledge is about, is asking you guys to kind of self-regulate, right? We can't control or monitor what you do off campus, but we can ask you to think about the fact that, like I said, some of your peers have graciously agreed to study remotely so that you can have this spot, and you're going to be returning to campus around folks. So you want to be thoughtful about that as well.
Tess, let people know that I've been answering some of the questions, so they should go to the tab under the Q&A that says answered so that they can find their question. Or I guess I just let them know.
I will say it again. There are questions and answers. The answered questions are on the Q&A. And yeah, if you guys have any other questions, we're at 7:06, so we're trying to be, you know, we don't want to tie up your whole evening here. But these, I think, were some of the really critical questions that we've heard from people along the way, the usual suspects of questions. But, you know, the general answer is that what we're doing for the fall does not mean that's what we're doing for the spring. Not where you live, not who you live with. We're taking this one semester at a time. and we'll be making adjustments and communicating them, you know, based on the environment that we're in San Antonio. I always try to be really honest and transparent, whether you're an international student or a student living out of state or another city, and maybe you're not keeping up with San Antonio. There are places, the City of San Antonio website has links to all the dashboards of indicators they're tracking, and just always want you to be aware of it. We're having a bad run of it with regard to COVID in Texas and in San Antonio in particular. And it's why it's so important that Trinity make adjustments and shifts, and why we treat this like our own little town, and we have to bring in our own resources. And frankly, we're not a health center. We're not a medical center. This is not our core competency. We're lucky that we have some of those capabilities, and we're able to, through our reputation and relationships in the community, deepen and strengthen those capabilities, but there's a limit to them. And we are trying to be conscientious about knowing our own limits and being honest about those to protect you guys, because our two guiding principles in all of this process have been, number one, creating a student-centric, exceptional experience, but number two, protecting the health and safety of students, faculty, and staff. And we're trying to balance those out in all of the decisions that we're making. And we can't thank all of you enough for being accommodating and flexible and generous with your time and with your questions. As we work to make this the safest, to protect you to the degree that we're all capable in an environment like this. So last thing I'll just say is, if you have lingering questions and we didn't get to them today, please email the Nerve Center at trinity.edu. So it's nervecenter@trinity.edu. That's kind of the project management office, if you will, that's serving as the hub to hundreds of people on campus that are subject matter experts on what we're doing, and we'll get you the answers and get them back to you as quickly as we can. The last thing is, keep checking that COVID-19 website. So it gets updated frequently, right, Courtney? There was an update today even, and you know, keep checking that site. And then if you just have other questions for academic advising, Dr. Bowman and team are glad to answer your questions. Enrollment management with your admissions counselors, they continue to, our admissions counselors will still kind of hover over you for some time, even after you're here, because they're really invested in your success. So I think it's okay, right, Val, for them to reach out even if they have questions to enrollment management. Any questions for our, did we miss anything big that you guys want to make sure we communicate to our international students or our RAs? I know RAs are getting their own specialized training, but anybody have anything else you think we need to make sure our international students know? You guys will go through testing like everybody else. We're arranging that relative to your move-in date. And as we've said before, if there are changes on campus, we understand that international students are in a difficult position. And so whether you're international students or a US citizen of families living abroad, we'll work with you on those things. You can feel good about that.
Tess,
So,
we have a couple of questions about will this be posted anywhere in case people want.
Great question. If you or someone you know asks about this and they've missed it, this is recorded and then it'll be posted on the COVID-19 website in an intersection that says community messages. So all the webinars or videos we've done are posted there. And I think it takes us, it might be tomorrow before we get it up, but it'll be on the website.
Can people see what's in the Q&A when that's posted, or is that not part of it?
No, we get a download of the Q&A, and what we generally do, so you guys know, is we take the frequently asked questions and then we add them to a master FAQ and then post them to the COVID-19 website as we rotate those in. Does that make sense? So if you have questions and we didn't answer them today, or it's really, really specific to your unique situation, it's okay. Just email us and we'll do our best to get you guys answers to those questions. So I think that's the big stuff. You know, we'll keep you posted on the status on campus. We're watching all those things carefully, but we think we have a plan to manage through most of what's going on here. And if it starts to reach our thresholds and indicators, we'll be real transparent about that. But stay with us and stay excited, because it's really going to be a great year regardless. We just have to all be in it together. So, one quick question. Quick answer to a question. We've seen a lot of questions about, and maybe Petra or Michael, if you're still on, we've talked about athletes, but performing arts, anybody in music, choir, what we're doing to kind of enable those students to continue to participate in their in those activities.
Performers will still have to abide by the health and safety protocols that all other students are expected to follow. But within that context, there will be some opportunities for large groups to interact either virtually or in some cases in, I guess, more limited settings than usually occur.
Thank you. So one of the things that they're doing is they're setting up sort of individual practice rooms. You'll be distanced when you practice together because those are, frankly, high-risk activities. Anything where you're really aerosolizing the virus is a high-risk activity, but they're doing the best to work through that, and they've worked with epidemiologists to come up with a lot of that. All right, we're making really great plans to protect you as best we can, but part of that's going to depend on you. And you're going to think of questions maybe we haven't yet, so please keep them coming. And we'll use the hive mind to get this right together, and we'll go from there. So you guys have a great evening, and we look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward even more to seeing you in a few weeks.